evening all. How are we all? And a merry pre-Christmas. As you can see, I have decorations now. Hurrah! Thought it was about time I get all festive in here. Well, fortunately, the kittens are in the house now, so I have peace and quiet in the office. They're not climbing all over stuff. Which means I had to spend like 20 minutes fixing my curtains because they'd pulled them all apart. No, I turned the autofocus off completely. Hang on, let's have a quick look. No, autofocus is off. I think that's about as good as it's gonna get. Yeah, I think that's about as focused as it can be. Yeah, that's why I waited until the kittens are out before I put the tree up. Claire's not particularly a cat fan, and she's now sharing a room with 3 of them, so that's nice. Right then, what are we doing? Yes, Caravella, it's Sunday. So, on Friday's stream, we built a new system for properly managing Sublight flights and Sublight objects in the game. So we can spawn an object, the object spawns its proxy, it's got full physics, and it can interact with the ship. So I thought it'd be nice if we go ahead and put that in the same environment as the Caravella, give some Sublight controls to the Caravella, and basically set up like a little mini asteroid field where we can fly around and kind of plow through some asteroids and kind of barge them out of the way. That's kind of my goal for this evening, so we'll see how far we get with that. If I just go to there, then we'll have a look at where we got last time, just as a reminder. I can't remember what keys I set this up with now. So on last week's stream, we added the RCS thrusters so that we can control the ship. So the ship has 0 gravity right now, which is why it's just floating there. But as you can see, the Sublight thrusters do what they're supposed to do. Can't remember whether I did left and right, so I had a roll, I had yaw, I had pitch. Don't think we got as far as up and down. No, that was it. So pitch, yaw, and roll. Those are the controls we have so far. and those are being driven by actual thrusters. So if we start thrusting the ship, and it's actually quite a lot of fun to fly it like this. It's like it feels like a remote control Starship. But those RCS thrusters are applying actual impulse onto the ship, so it's not using like fakery to move around. It's using full physics movement, which is why it's a little bit hard to control. So we need to hook this up to the helm chair and make it so that we can actually like properly fly this thing. Oh, I'm going to plow it into the floor now, aren't I? Boom. Yeah. So, what's the best way of approaching this? I suppose first of all, we need to turn that music down so I can hear myself think. Let's hop over to the Caravella level. That's my test map with all my test stuff. Let's grab that blueprint. So the it's just a test model. It's not a fully finished model yet. Nectosaur, yeah. So what we're doing is, by default, it's fully Newtonian. So all of the thrusters add actual input, and the ship will spin forever unless you apply opposing thrust. However, at the simplest form, what we can do is we can have a flight assist mode where we apply damping. So if we do, I don't know, 0.05, 0.05, no, 0.05. So we just fire that up a sec. So if I roll the ship and let go of the controls, it will actually slow down all on its own. Turn the damping value up, that's not enough. There we go. So you can see when I let go, the rotation just cancels out all on its own. So our flight assist mode will be, how much do you want it to cancel out rotation? And essentially all you're doing is you're applying a treacle-like atmosphere around the ship. So every kind of rotation just gets dampened out. And we can do the same for linear velocity as well, which means that if you're panicking and it's flying out of control, all you need to do is just take your hands off the controls and it will stabilize and stop. And because it is just a damping value, obviously that's not black and white, that's a spectrum of values. So what we can do is we can actually have that as a slider. So you can choose just how strong you want the damping effect to be. If you want it to be heavily dampened, then we can certainly do that. Just interested actually as to how well this allows us to fly the ship somewhat like a plane. I don't have any linear damping values right now. Yeah, well, what we need to do is we need to limit the nozzle velocity on the RCS thrusters, so they can only apply impulse to a certain extent. I need to research that more thoroughly. But at its basic form, having some damping sliders at least allows us to give some control over the ship for people that don't want full Newtonian physics. But yeah, fully Newtonian will be the default. Yep, no reason why not Delta. It'll be a control on the Helm UI, so it'll literally be something you can turn on and off. Like, just click the switch and you can have damping on or off. And we'll call it something appropriate. Like damping assist or like rotational assist, something like that. Yeah, interesting question. I don't think the mass of the ship is so great that it would have a noticeable effect on people aboard. Obviously, we're generating gravity anyway, so that's what's going to be the overriding force. Like, would it be big enough to actually have objects orbit it? Like, could you chuck an apple out of an airlock and have it actually orbit the ship if you threw it at the right angle? I mean, maybe there's enough mass there for that, but don't know. I mean, you certainly couldn't on the ISS, but then that's a much lower mass object. Why is that offset? Oh, I see. So what we essentially need to do here is we need to write a whole new flight control for the Sublight. As it stands currently, we're using a plugin to do the flight of the ship, which requires that the ship be a pawn. So it's basically treating it like a pawn within the game, and then it applies the flight mechanics to that pawn. By going full physics-driven flight, we don't need it to be a pawn anymore. It can just be a normal actor within the world, which is what our physics test is. So we now need to set this up so it's doing all the same stuff that the old ship would be doing. So it needs to report its location in the galaxy, it needs to report its location in physical space, and it needs to drive the proxy version of itself as well. Now we did have the proxies taking care of their own representation in space, but I think, like we did with our new system, we want ships to spawn their own proxies. Because we're basically working towards the point where we can spawn a shuttle in the shuttle bay, as in we can 3D print a shuttle, and then that 3D printed shuttle produces its proxy so that you can see it. And then we also need the same for, if an enemy ship warps in, then that enemy ship needs a proxy so that you can see it. So we need all of that to happen dynamically without pre-placing any of those assets in the world. So let's grab our random object spawner a minute. Can't remember where I put it. There. Where are you? There. So unlike the Magellan, the center of the world's not on the bridge, it's the geometric center of the ship, which is there, which is why everything's kind of going there. And I just want to make sure that this is in fact spawning stuff. Not seeing any cubes, although there's apparently 250 of them. So again, like we were doing last Friday, we need to make sure that we are representing those objects in space and that they are seen by all the things that need to see them. Did I abandon that? Yeah, I didn't bother with that in the end. Right, yeah, so this is assuming that the Caravella is at Earth. Let's just make sure that it is in fact at Earth. We were putting it somewhere random. Okay, so let's just make sure that this object is where it should be. So we want it to be there. Yes, exactly, Delta. That's exactly how they work. Just copying the values over from the Magellan so that we're starting off in exactly the same spot around Earth. And then we also just need, I suppose for now we will skip checking the game mode and just force it to be there. Shuttle's there, so that's a good sign. Okay, so we're around Earth. We got a shuttle above us, so that's good. Got all of our cubes appearing up there, so that's good. So I guess we'll do the same testing that we were doing on the Magellan with the shuttle, just making sure that we have the same viewpoint from the shuttle as we do from the main ship, and then make sure that all of that is in the right place. Of course, I'm not sure why they're all the way up there. It's probably something to do with the fact that the Magellan's offset by 50,000 to this shuttle. We can turn that down now. This is probably a ship ID thing. Yeah, so I imagine it's going to be something in our space object. Checking its transform. Oh yeah, and then the proxy. There we go. So yeah. So the Caravella is ID number 2 at the moment, and again, this needs to be dynamic. We are setting these things up manually, but that's not particularly expandable if we're spawning vessels on the fly. So this is a reference to where the origin point of the object is. So like the shuttle is 50,000 units below the ship. Its interior is down there. So when you're looking out of a window, things you see in space need to be offset vertically by the same distance that the interior is below the world origin. But we need to find a way of having it work that out itself. The less manual work we have to do, the better. There we go, that's better. So, so our little cubes are now spawning around the ship, because we've got our vertical offset correct. So those are essentially what will be our asteroid field. And then where we want to get to with this is we want to be able to start barging them out the way. In fact, I think it was CSI that suggested that we turn them into potatoes. And I'm down with that, so let's make them potatoes. And also, when we spawn them, rather than spawning them on a loop like that, let's just do a for loop and then spawn a certain number of them. So let's spawn 500, well technically 501. So it should just do that pretty much as one big solid block of potatoes. Oh yeah, I see potatoes. I neglected to set the scale of them. We are in fact surrounded by potatoes, but they're potato-sized potatoes, and that's no good. We want giant potatoes. Now there's a point. We also need to set the scale. Yeah, so I imagine that might override it, but let's just see. Yeah, it will override it. Okay, so let's make them 100 times larger, and that's the physics proxy. And when we spawn, yes, that's, oh no, that is the proxy. So that's the size of the proxy. and then the space object also needs to be that big. Because we want our collisions to obviously be the same scale as the proxy object. Okay, do it. Yeah. Oh, okay. Potatoes just went everywhere. Let's kill collisions on that a minute, just so we can test. Ah, there we go. Yeah, I'll randomize it once we're happy with what we're doing with them. Okay, many potatoes. So a note on performance. All of these potatoes are setting their transforms and updating their proxies, all of that at 30 Hertz, so 30 times a second. And we've got 500 in our field of view. Feels smooth enough, so that's nice. Now the problem we have is they are overlapping one another and then just flying off into space, which we don't want to do. So we want to make sure that we stop that from happening. So we only want them to block Starship objects, and they themselves are starships. I need to rename that really, but essentially everything in like the physics volume is able to collide and impact with only other things in the physics volume. Yeah, so they're all just knocking each other off into space, which is just not helpful. So when we spawn them... Oh no, that's the proxy. I want to try and not overlap them if we can. I'm wondering whether or not the size of our actual object is too big. Yeah, I think that was it. Shuttle got hit by a potato. Oh, I'm wondering actually whether or not whether the visible ones are inheriting the scale of the sim version, which would be weird. Right, before we start our timer, I think what we'll do is we'll actually broadcast the transform and then do the timer, because they're kind of flashing when they get spawned in, and that will stop that from happening. Now I think this value is going to be overridden by the proxy tick. And I'll set that back to 1, but that might actually override. But let's just check a minute. Yeah, that's given us tiny potatoes, which we don't want. Yeah, I can definitely see them. Yeah, so they are there. Okay. Alright, so we definitely have to manage the scale from here. So that's pointless to specify it there. Don't need, we do need that. I'll adjust that in a sec. Right, let's see if we can't fly our test shuttle around, test ship. So we've got, I think, our physics test there already. Yeah, let's just see whether or not that works a minute. I'm sure you could, yeah. Okay, so our proxy is getting stuck on something. Not sure what. Itself, perhaps? Let's just move that out of the way a minute. Yeah, we can definitely specify mass. Okay, so I think we're probably missing the right collision channel on this because I'm not seeing any potatoes being bopped. That should be a collision with the ring. Yeah, so wrong collision channel, which means we're just going straight through it. Okay. So we've got custom collision. We want that to be Starship Ignore everything except Starship. Okay. It should now be potato compatible. Assuming it even has a collision mesh. Oh, actually, it does definitely have a collision mesh because we were hitting the ground with it. Collision enabled, Starship, blocking starships. Collision enabled, Starship, blocking starships. Yeah, so they should definitely be able to collide. Let's just check that our mesh does indeed have collisions. They're not going to be pretty collisions, but we should at least have some. Oh, actually, didn't we make it a cube? Oh, yeah, it's lost its collision. So yeah, so we had the cube collision on it. But that's no good for this. So if we try and make ourselves an auto-convex hull, so we'll just whack all that up to maximum, hit apply, and wait for it to hopefully come up with something reasonable. Yes, potatoes should also collide with potatoes. Now the issue we had using our auto-generated collisions last time is that it was kind of back heavy, which I thought was actually a good thing in terms of the physics. It actually takes the collision volume into account when working out its center of mass, which is kind of helpful, not helpful. That's interesting. The ship is reacting like it's the shuttle. Obviously the shuttle got hit by something. Obviously we're not the shuttle, so we shouldn't be behaving like one. Let's do Alt-1 a minute, just to... Come on, get out the ceiling. Our alt teleports are obviously set to the Magellan, which is why you end up going through the floor. I should have checked that we're on the right ship. Oh, that's interesting. Now we don't have space or potatoes. Oh, of course, because we're setting our ship to 1. Right, yes, of course. Yeah, so again, space is under the impression that we're on the shuttle, which is why it's all spinning around, because that's what the shuttle's doing. Let's just see if we can find the right camera view. Do something with this anyway. Interesting, the Caravella test ship seems to be stuck in place. It's always something, isn't there? Right, let's rotate that round a minute. Point it in the right direction, just so right, yeah, and let's see if we can sort out why that's spinning. Okay, so when we start the game, we are setting our vessel ID to 2, and we're setting our current vessel to 2 on the player controller. Accepting that, that's probably not valid. No, it should be actually, because we've already spawned in our spectator pawn by then. Let's stick in a delay a minute, just to make sure that we've got a valid controller a minute. So we're definitely setting the right vessel ID. Okay, so those are the interiors. We've got shuttle proxy there, shuttle proxy there. Why do we have 2 shuttle proxies? Oh, I see, that's the Caravella one. Okay. So yeah, so they're fine. And then the flyable shuttle is in the middle there. And that's spawned there. So I'm just wondering whether one of these has collisions when it shouldn't do. Now, see, that's the proxy one. The proxy one should not have collisions. Let's just make sure. It's got no collision there. Something's hitting the shuttle, and it could do, yeah. Something's hitting the shuttle and moving it when we don't want it to. Let's just not spawn any potatoes a minute. Yeah, so, okay, so a potato is hitting the shuttle, basically. But our viewpoint on the world shouldn't be being driven by the shuttle. Although, interestingly, the Caravella should be able to hit the shuttle. Assuming it's capable of moving. Let's get rid of the damping on this a minute. I'm wondering actually whether or not the thrusters are either not powerful enough now that we've added some mass to the object, or they're thrusting inside the collision mesh and that's confusing it. Hang on, let's make this a box a minute. Really simple box. Yep, need to get the Caravella moving properly first, and then we will definitely be pooping potatoes. Yeah, so we're alright for pitch and roll. And yaw, but forward and back's not working. I do wonder whether that's because now that we've added collisions to it, it's maybe not strong enough. Right, where were we? So manage input, main forward. Right, let's add an extra 0 onto that. And on that as well. Just to see whether it's literally a thruster strength problem. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, let's just go back to our test map a minute. Just want to make sure we haven't broke the physics. Okay, yeah, so we have broke the physics, basically. Oh, hang on, are we slowly creeping forwards? Okay. Let's add another couple of zeros. Ah, there we go. Yeah, so this is a force issue, it's not a physics issue. And it's yeah, it's still colliding, so that's good. Oops, no. Let's do that auto-convex hull again. Yeah, it just used a litter tray. Boop. I'm not sure why the nose is without collisions. Interesting. See, that's the offset thrust problem that we were having with this. It's using the collision mesh to determine its center of mass and everything. So of course, if the center of mass is off, then the thrusters are no longer providing balanced input, which means we're going to have to do something like that for a minute. Hopefully that's more balanced, or maybe we'll just do a capsule collision, because it's a round ship. We do a round collision. I'm going to have to basically make a series of cubes and build the collision mesh using those cubes as closely as I can to the hull, and make sure that they're completely balanced so we don't get offset thrust. Right, okay, so we've got thrust and it should boop the floor now. It's interesting that it's the collisions we're seeing are not in keeping with the collisions we're generating, which is odd. So it is generating a capsule. That is weird. Perhaps it's the floor mesh that it's not colliding with. Interesting. Okay. Well, technically, because of the collision channels, it shouldn't have been colliding with anything. So that's weird in itself. Right, we have movement. Let's just stop that a minute. So we should be able to bop the shuttle out of the way. Or not. So what did it collide with? I mean, maybe, but it's unlikely because it's using constant collision detection, so I mean, it should be fairly robust. There's obviously something there that it's hitting. Several somethings there that it's hitting. Oh, I see. Oh, actually, no, that's... So those collisions are purely for the player. So it's not that. Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be able to collide with interior objects because nothing in the ship should have the Starship collision channel assigned to it. That is weird. Hang on a minute. So anything set to block all should technically block it, but if the object itself is set to ignore everything except its own channel, then it shouldn't collide with it. But yeah, I think there's something inside the ship it's colliding with. But what I've just remembered is what we've built here is a physics object which is flying around proxy space. So what we're looking at here is all proxy space. None of this is actually technically with collisions. So quite rightly, it shouldn't be colliding with these objects. It should be colliding with the physics sim versions of those objects. So what we actually need is a physics sim version of this ship, which wouldn't be here. It would be 1 AU away, or thereabouts. And then we need a proxy version of the same thing, which we can physically see. Hang on, let me sup my beer thoughtfully for a moment. Yes. A plan formeth. Because the proxy object that we are generating here that needs yeah, because we've got two different proxy objects. We've got proxy objects which are always relevant, things like asteroids. Doesn't matter which ship you're on, they're going to be relevant. But then we've got proxy objects which are only relevant when you're not that object. So the proxy for the Magellan is only relevant when you're not on the Magellan, in which case, if you are, it's hidden. That's not the case for everything else. So I suppose what we need to do is maybe have a slight alteration to this, where we can flag whether or not it's whether or not it needs a visibility check. So when we're handling our local movement, I guess we need a boolean for that. So manage something like this, I suppose. So if manage visibility is true, then we want to make sure that our current vessel is not the same as the vessel ID of this proxy. So that's going to be true for shuttles, stations, other ships, anything the player can physically board and walk around. So for everything else, that will be false. So we'll default it to false. So we've already got the target vessel variable, and I think if we do that, because we're going to be comparing this essentially against this. So if that is the same as that, which is a cleaner way of doing this, isn't there? So to set visibility, so if matching is true, then we want to invert the boolean, and visibility would be false. Yeah. That should take care of that. So this is only ever going to bother doing anything if managed visibility is checked. Yes, Simon, we are most definitely doing sublights. So this physics test, this is going to be our new ship, essentially. So all the stuff that we're doing here with the autopilot management, the warp management, and all of the flight systems that we've built, all of that needs transferring over to our physics test, which at the moment consists of just that. So we'll build those systems up again one by one to take into account the fact we're now doing actual physics movement. Yes, we've got two versions of that mesh. So we're going to spawn our proxy and broadcast our transform to that object. We'll just steal that for now. And we're still going to have to deal with the fact that our view is locked to the shuttle. We'll fix that in a minute. Let's just recreate that function. Yeah, so we're going to use the same proxy object class, and what I want to do is make sure that we're always using the same proxy object class across the board to try and make this as modular as possible. Which means we're going to add a bit of additional functionality to this, whereby we have to set what the mesh is. Like right now it's a potato, but we need a function for setting that mesh. In fact, let's do that now. Set static mesh. Even better, set proxy mesh. So we want to grab our mesh, set static mesh, and we'll drive that by our event. So if we set that back to the cube that we had before, so our simple engine cube, not sure which one was the engine cube, it wasn't that one. Is it that one? No, it wasn't that one. Is it just called cube? Cube, that one I think. Basic shapes cube, there we go. Give it its red LED material. Right, there's our proxy cube. And then on our spawner, what we want to do is we're just going to spawn our actor, and then we're going to set proxy mesh, probably have to cast to it, cast to, oh no, that's the space object that needs to do that. So when we spawn our proxy, we will then set mesh. So we're setting the mesh of the proxy from the sim actor that's spawning it, and in this case we're doing a potato. Right, so if I then hook that back up, which I have, we should still get potatoes. Red potatoes, but potatoes nonetheless. Why are they red? I'm wondering whether because I've already overridden the texture here. I imagine it's using the override texture. Yeah, that's what it was doing. It was just using the override texture. Yeah, so the reason that that particular physics sim version of the Magellan is not actually colliding with any of those potatoes is because as far as it's concerned, they're not there. Because it's flying around with physics in the proxy realm, not the actual sim realm. So we need to make sure that we sort that out so that it's capable of spawning a proxy of itself, but then itself being in the right place. So when we spawn the object, we're going to have to make sure that we spawn it in the right place. Yeah, okay. So if we steal that and we grab, actually we do the shuttle version. We'll steal this one because we've got our rotator code. So we can decide exactly where to put it. Right, then for our... Nope, not that one. That one. Right, so on begin play, first of all, we want to tell it where it is. So create that variable, create that variable. We want it to be like in front of the ship by some distance, so maybe that much. Yeah, so that should just be spawning it in front of where the Magellan is currently. We then want to spawn a proxy object of it. So that's where we'll borrow this. We're going to need probably a custom class for this eventually, because we need one that obviously has visible RCS thrusters. So I'm going to spawn that. And the mesh is going to be Caravella proxy. Okay, so we're spawning the sim version where we want it. We're then spawning the proxy version with its offset to the ship we're on. So when we hit begin play, if all went to plan, we should see a Caravella in front of us. And it should be keeping up with the potatoes. Oh, Sophie, thank you. As always, very, very much appreciated. Have a heart. There we go. Yes, AJ, it will do. The proxy ship has to be an exact representation of the main vessel in every way. Yeah, I'm not seeing a Caravella there. I mean, it's not there, which means it's definitely moving. Perhaps I put it too far forwards. Right, let's lose the potatoes again a minute so that we're not spinning when we're testing. Where did our spawner go? There we go. Okay, so we're definitely putting the non-proxy ship, the sim version, somewhere else because we can't see it, which means it's definitely being moved. And then we should also have the visible proxy of that being spawned, which I'm not seeing in front or behind. Okay. So let's put it above. So we're definitely spawning a proxy object. And we're using the same class that we're using for the other objects. So it's definitely going to work. So the only question is our coordinates there correct? We definitely used these ones. Let's just double check that a minute. Because if the coordinates are off, even by a little bit, then that's a long way in terms of galactic space. So the shuttle is 30 meters above the ship. So we want this one to be 50 meters above. So all we're doing is we're spawning it in exactly the same space, just up a bit. Yeah, then we're spawning the proxy object above the ship just to get it out of the way. And then it will be running its own tick to position itself. So we should see a shuttle and then the other Caravella stacked above it. Which we are definitely not. Oh, I think I might know what's happening actually. It's not doing its broadcast, so yes, so of course it needs to be broadcasting its location and sending that to the proxy. That's what we're missing. So we spawn that there, we put that there, then we need to start broadcasting our transform. And let's grab that function. Oh, have it all ready. Yes, we weren't setting off the timer. Right, so now we should have another Caravella. Fingers crossed. Oh, yeah. And of course we made it huge, didn't we? Because of the potatoes. Right, so yeah, we have like a massive Caravella that we don't want. So let's fix our scale problem. Yeah, so we're going to have to manage this from here. So so if we don't do the scale here, we're just spawning actors at their ordinary scale. And then on the actual object itself, if we set relative scale, we'll set the scale of our object. We will then get the same scale. And then we'll set the scale of the proxy object from this instead. So this is where we can get random floating range. So if we go from, I don't know, 8 to 12, that should give us some randomly sized potatoes, and then we're actually setting that scale on the proxy, which means that the proxy, which is where, when we handle our movement there, we're just going to set the scale back to what it should be. Might need to set that as a variable, otherwise we'll get oddly sized potatoes. Right, okay, now we're getting somewhere. So we've got the proxy version now of our Caravella, which means you won't see the RCS thrusters firing because this is just a proxy mesh. If you could see the original, you would see thrusters firing. So that's why that particular proxy needs to be a custom object, a custom proxy object. So it's now moving in a jittery way because of the updates. Actually, let's change the update speed on that. So the broadcast will do at 60 Hertz, and then we'll update it at 30. That should make it smoother. And on this one again, we'll do 60 Hertz. That should make it move a bit smoother. So basically, it's updating its location twice the speed that the proxy is checking. So when the proxy checks, it should always be the most accurate location. Hopefully that'll make it a bit smoother. Yeah, look at that, much smoother. Yeah, so even though it's only checking at 30 Hertz, it's actually updating the data at 60 Hertz. So you get smoother movement. And what you're seeing there now is literally just the proxy object, which means it should be able to boop the shuttle. Or nothing at all. Interesting. Okay. Why do we have no boopage? Let's spawn a greatly reduced number of potatoes so we don't hopefully overlap anything. Okay, so as feared, the scale of the potatoes is resetting because the way it's handling its transform. So it's probably easier. Yeah, so rather than doing set transform, we'll do set location and rotation, so that we're not messing with that. We're not messing with the scale. Okay, we seem to have potatoes zooming about. Okay, so might need to do this via a variable then, or just via here should do it actually. Set proxy scale. Set scale. Okay, so on our space object, just going to have to do this instead. So set proxy scale. So rather than scaling the whole actor, we're just going to scale the mesh. So the actual actor itself is normal scale, the mesh is whatever scale we set there. That should give us bigger potatoes. Yeah. No. Oh, I know why. I know why. It's because I set them from 10 to 12, 8 to 12, not 80 to 120. Which of course it should have been, shouldn't it? Because we want them to be big, so big potatoes. Okay, so 50 is obviously too many. Although we could maybe move them out a bit. Yeah. So if that, sorry. If that is lower than, how far do we want it to be? Let's do, what's that, 10,000, that's 100 meters. Of course, we can't do this in a loop, can we? But what we can do is we'll go back up to the 500 and we'll just skip any that are within what is essentially a keep out zone around the ship. Although they are still colliding with one another, which doesn't help. Let's try and increase the range maybe. We'll set them to do not spawn if they're in any way overlapping. And they still fly everywhere. See, that's weird. They shouldn't be doing that. So yeah, so we're definitely spawning with a scale of 1. And the only thing we're scaling is the mesh itself. Yeah, so it's just the mesh that we're scaling there. Let's put that back down to, oops, no, not that many, 50. That is weird. I mean, surely you'd think that all those actors are far enough apart that they're not going to collide. Let's just take like 2. We have target potatoes. Okay, I'm going to line up our boop. I turned off damping, so that's right. Let's full speed a boop. Am I going to completely miss the potato? Maybe. I missed the potato. Try again. Turn. We need more potatoes. That was perhaps the worst flying ever. How is it possible that within such a wide region of space they are spawning on top of each other? Right, there's one right there. Surely we can hit that. I shall try less spamming speed. Okay, boop. Okay, pretty sure that went through that. Okay. Right, let's just double check all of our collision channels and everything. So, object type Starship, collision enabled. We're running CCD and we're set to block starships. That is everything that it needs to be. Right, you. Okay, we are simulating physics. Collision enabled. Object type Starship, set to block Starship. Okay, so that should be good. And just to double check, we're definitely using the sim mesh, which definitely has collisions. Okay. Right, so the other thing I can do to test this is we can move where the ships are. So if we forget about the spawner, so let's get rid of that a minute. Spawner. So we'll get rid of our potato spawner, and instead we'll actually place a potato exactly where we want it to be. And then what we'll do is we will force the location of our Caravella, because this is what's driving we see. Like, this has to be where the potatoes are, basically. So if we duplicate that and set the Caravella at 0, 0, 0, so we're sticking that right at the world origin, which is also where the ship is, of course, but that shouldn't matter because the collision channels shouldn't be overlapping. We'll leave the shuttle where it is around Earth, so it won't be in our way. And then yeah, we'll set our rotation to 0 and 0, 0. So we should have a flat Caravella in the middle of where essentially the sun would be. We will then spawn a proxy object. That should just go wherever we put it. Yeah. So let's add a proxy object, and we're going to add that basically there. Oh, sorry, not a proxy object, space object. Stick that in front. Now we want that one obviously to be a potato. So in order to do that, let's promote this to a variable, so that we're setting that on spawn, and we also need to set the mesh here as well. So we're setting our static mesh, which we're also going to promote a variable. So that's going to be object mesh, which we'll expose on spawn, and our proxy mesh. Right, so object mesh is going to be the same as the proxy mesh, which is just a potato. And oh, we need the scale as well, don't we? I'll just do a set scale for now, just for testing's sake, so that we're not running into any issues. So we'll promote that to a variable, and we'll do that object scale. Expose it on spawn, and by default that will be 1, but in the case of our potato we want it to be 100. And then so we can see that in the editor. We'll also do that on the constructor as well. Don't know why we're doing that there. Let's skip that for a minute. That might be giving us a few false positives. Oh, actually, yeah. No, that's not going to do anything. Obviously, we can't scale the proxy, which is the thing we can see, until we hit begin play. But what we can do is maybe make that visible. And then we'll set it to hidden in game on begin play. Because this should never ever be visible. That way we can see what we're working with. Holy cube. Why are you not making it a potato? Oh, of course. Because we're not setting it in the constructor, that's why. Right, it's better. Potato. Right, so that's our physics potato. And then we need, obviously, our physics Caravella as well. Which, to be perfectly honest, we may as well just leave there. And then we need to make sure that when we do begin play here, 0, 0, 0, and we want that value there. Okay, so the Caravella's where it should be. And I'm assuming, yeah, so you're actually seeing the non-proxy version there. And it should technically have its proxy version overlaid on top. Although that said, they should be opposite to one another. We'll do the same on here on begin play. We will grab our static mesh. Let's make sure that it's hidden in game. Just zero out the rotation. Right, so that should be our proxy. Right, it's not, because I can see the RCS firing. Although that said, that might be coming from the fact I didn't hide those. Okay. Hang on, let's just make sure we hide children as well. We don't want to see anything from the sim version, again, because that will lead to false positives. Right, there we go. So that is absolutely, definitely the proxy we're seeing, because it's got no RCS thrusters on it. And we are right in the middle of the world origin. So, the question I'm sure you're all eager to know is, where's the potato? I don't know. I share your eagerness to know where the potato went. Let's just not hide it on begin play. Just make sure it's still physically there, or is it being moved? is no potato. It sounds like it, doesn't it? So all we're doing is getting our just actor location and rotation. Now we're not spawning it anywhere specific, because that's supposed to be handled by the thing spawning the space object. So if we choose to just place one in the world, i.e. there, then that object should be there at all times. I'm going to add a few potatoes around the place. Let's just set our lighting mode to potato rather aptly, just to see if I can see any. No, definitely not seeing any. Right, what's going on with that then? So I'm setting our mesh, which we are actually doing the construction script, but that's fine because we want to do it from here anyway. Spawning our proxy, setting the mesh on the proxy, setting the scale from our mesh that we already have. And then we start broadcasting our location. So let's start spamming some spam to see whether we're actually where we should be. So there should be a bunch of potatoes spamming their location, which they are quite happily. I'm going to get rid of the duplicate potatoes and just stick with the one potato a minute. Right, so that's 10,087, and that one should be at 10,087. Right, so that's definitely in the right place. And it interestingly thought it was still there. Interesting. Why was it not visible then? I'm going to skip setting the scale and the mesh because we're setting them in the constructor just to kind of that's what it was. So it's obviously not getting a valid reference for the static mesh. Right, so that should hit it. And it is not. Why not, is the question. Set to block all. Shouldn't have made a difference. Let's leave that on 0. Turn on CCD for the ship. This is more a game of boop the potato. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is if we skip, let's skip spawning the proxy. And then we won't hide the actual physics object, and just make sure that the physics object is in fact hitting the potato. Because if it's not, then that would explain something. Kind of peeling back the layers of smoke and mirrors to try and work out what's actually going on. Right, so that's not the proxy. And we know that's not the proxy because it's got RCS that are doing stuff. Okay. We're obviously missing something here. Not sure what we're missing, but we're missing something. What if just wondering whether or not if we add another one, another couple, and they should all receive input at the same time, I expect. Oh, yeah. Oh, they're definitely colliding with one another because they went flying off into nowhere. Let's separate them out a little bit so they're not colliding. No, still colliding. That's weird because they shouldn't be touching. Yeah, let's just let that fully load so we can see what's going on. So I imagine one of them is getting the input. Is it that one? No, it's not that one. Oh no, it is that one. Oh, I know what's happening. It's because we're giving it a transform in the beginning. So we need to basically skip all of this and just enable input. Just going to skip all of that, because it's putting all three of them on top of each other, which is why they were colliding. Trying to work out here, is it the Caravella physics ship or the potato that's at fault? Right, so it can definitely hit itself. So can the potato hit itself? So if we stack a bunch of them up, and then on one of them, I enable gravity on just the top one. Just expose that. Right, so the top one has gravity enabled, so it should fall and hit the others. Which is successfully doing. Okay. Yeah. So that's weird. So they'll collide with themselves in both instances, but not each other. So if I pop that there, just to see whether or not, once they've been awoken, do they land on the Caravella? No, they do not. They go straight through it. This is baffling indeed, because all the collision channels are exactly the same on both of them. So that is weird. That shouldn't make a difference. I'm gonna change that, but it shouldn't make a difference. That just determines when it sleeps the physics to save on performance. Nope. Okay. Next idea. So it's something we were doing on here, as we were setting collision response to channel. So if we do that, I mean, just to make sure that we are forcing it to collide with stuff, even though we're setting it in the constructor, just make sure that it is actually doing what it's supposed to do. I mean, that's basically just reinforcing what we're already telling it here, but you never know, could be a bug. No, it is not that. Alright then, what if we set this to the Caravella sim. What? What on earth? Oh. Ah. Oh, ah. Oh, could it be a scale thing? Is that what we're dealing with here? Are we dealing with a scale issue? No, it's not a scale issue. Okay, so it can't be the mesh because we're using the same mesh. So it's obviously something to do with the actors themselves. But they can collide with each other, but not. So they can collide with themselves, not each other, but they're all using the same mesh. I mean, we'll try just waking it up. I mean, we shouldn't need to do that. They should start awake. Thank you, Delta. I think I need it. we're setting that there. Did I set that in the proxy? No, I did. Hang on, I might have accidentally sidestepped fixing it. Right, so collision response to channel Starship block. Collision enabled, and avoid waking because it should already be awake. Something occurs to me actually is that the test ship is on a different level. So if we move it to the persistent level, I mean, I'm sure that shouldn't make a difference, but I mean, let's just see. No. Let's get rid of some of these other blueprints a minute. Right, I'm going to set this everywhere. So ideally I'd like to make this the root, but I'll have to double check that. Right, so our static mesh, just going to check it once more. So we're simulating physics. Collision channel is Starship. I mean, let's just set it to block all, just as a test. Okay, so on block all, it's still not blocking anything. Okay, and then do the same with this. So simulate physics. I need damping value on there. And we'll set our collision to block all. Ah, okay. Right. So this is weird. So if we set block all, it works. I'm guessing if we set this back to custom as Starship, and we only block Starship, I'm guessing that will just go through. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay. So set this to Starship, block Starship. And it goes through. I'm starting to think that this is an engine bug. Let's just set these both to physics only. I mean, it has to be. Everything is set exactly the same. So the only thing I can think of is it must be an engine bug. Well, the thing is, they already are just capsules. I mean, that's just a capsule. And so are the potatoes, I believe. Let's grab our potato. Oh, don't have a potato. Yes, I do. There it is. Collision. Yes, that's our potato collision. Well, yeah, I mean, we tested that just now. So potatoes collide with potatoes and caravellas collide with caravellas. But right now we're only dealing with caravellas. So we're only dealing with capsule collision. And the issue seems to be with custom collision channels specifically. Because if we set that one to block all, well, actually, no, I think it's more this one, isn't it? That's the problem. So, can we? No, we can't do it. So they're both actors. If we tell this one to block all, then it should collide with the other Caravella, which it does. So that's working. Everything's colliding with everything. But the problem is it's colliding with everything, which is not what we want. So we specifically want these objects to only collide with the channel that we're interested in, which in this case is Starship. So object type is Starship, and it's only colliding with Starship. So all those objects should be only colliding with things on that collision channel. Now what we could do, we can just set it to world dynamic and only have it block Starship, just as a test. Yeah, and then it's not colliding with anything at that point. It's just even falling through itself because those objects are not on the right channel. So query collisions is just overlapping things, so like going through trigger boxes and that stuff. The physics only is literally just physics collisions, which, to be honest, is more relevant for what we're using. So they're all colliding with each other. So we know that all those objects are on the same channel and they collide. I can set that to physics only. And again, look, we're telling it on here, channel, Starship, block. We're just re-emphasizing what we've already set up there. yeah, and we're enabling collisions, so that's kind of doubling up on what we're doing. And we'll do the same here. Starship block. Now I think the issue might be is that in the settings, where we specify collision channels, here. So the default response is ignore. Now we want it to be ignore specifically because if we don't set it to ignore, then everything else can collide with it by default, and then we'll have to explicitly set them to ignore rather than everything ignoring by default. Now I'm wondering whether this is the this is the engine bug, in that because it's set to ignore by default, it's ignoring what we set on the actual meshes themselves. So if we just verify that these are both set up the way we want, so physics only Starship block, physics only Starship block, just doing that in the constructor, doing it there as well. Oh no, physics only Starship block. This shouldn't be needed. You know, we're setting it on the mesh. We shouldn't need to be emphasizing what we're doing. If this now works, then I would say it's 99% an engine bug. It does not work. So it's even more of an engine bug because we're setting, we're literally setting that the default response to block. Let's set up a whole new object channel and call it test. That's quite something else actually. Let's call it right. So we now have a new channel that we can collide things on. So if we compile that a minute, we now have our new channel. So we're going to set the object to and blocking that, and then the same on this one. We're going to set it to compile a minute, make sure that comes up, and we're blocking it. So they should all collide with each other, which they do. Right, so that would suggest that this is bugged, because just setting this up here fixed it. Now if we set that to ignore, and then we'll recompile that and that. So it's removed block because we've told it not to by default. So we'll turn that on by default on the mesh. Now if they still collide, then I'm completely convinced it's an engine bug. See, now they don't collide, even though we've told it to. Now if I then go back there and we set the default behavior to block. Now let's try just compiling that and that and see what they actually do. Now they work. So I think that's it. I think that's the root of our engine bug, is that if the default action is ignore, then even if you tell it like explicitly to block, it won't. It's obeying the engine project settings and it completely ignoring what you set here. That's really annoying. So if we set that back to Starship because that might actually have fixed that problem. Let's just try that a minute. Yeah, see, that one's still not behaving the way we want it to. So if we now remove what we did here, so we're not actually explicitly telling it to do that, and we'll just get rid of that from the constructor as well. We will get to the bottom of this. Does it still break? Yep, it's still broken there. Although, I noticed I was doing that previously. Just on a whim, out of interest. Let's try setting it in both constructors rather than begin play. And just see whether that helps us at all. No. Okay. Okay. Fascinating. Right, so one last test, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try just rebooting the engine. Yeah, because that's still going through. Right, let's close that down a minute. And reopen. Don't you just love it when you spend 2 hours fighting engine bugs? This, to be honest, it might be a documented bug. I haven't actually looked. I shall delve into that after the stream. But yeah, this has to be an engine bug, because that's just not, it's not normal and it's not predictable. So that screams engine bug. So having changed nothing, let's see whether it works now. It does not. Okay. So what does work, weirdly, if we literally just change the channel, touching nothing else, just going to change the collision channel. Does that now fix it? Yes. So, given that we've changed none of the settings whatsoever, and we've literally just changed the channel here, means that that channel is obviously broken in some way. As far as I recall, they're both set up the same on here. Yeah, so default block, default block. That's irritating. So I'm going to set that one back to ignore, because there's a potential knock-on effect here of it affecting the Magellan because obviously that's already set up to work. However, I think just for testing the rest of this evening, we'll stick to the new collision channel. But I'm going to have to delete the Starship one, recreate it, and it's going to have to block by default, because otherwise starships aren't going to collide with stuff. Okay. Now that we've done that, let's just make sure. Let's make sure that our scale was working. So if we set that back to potato and set the scale to 100, let's just make sure massively overscaled objects still work. Yep, they are definitely colliding with the ship. Okay. Thank you, AJ. It's been, what, 8 years now? 9 years since I've been working in Engine, so I guess you pick up a few things along the way. Right, this better bloody well boop it now. Hurrah! Potato has been launched. Oh, there were 2 of them. That's nice. Okay. That was a lot of a lot of unnecessary debugging. Thank you, Epic. Blah 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 blah. Set all that back up again. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Pop that back in there. Right, so I'm going to move the Caravella back to its proper location. And we will pop in the rotation that looks nicest to Earth. Oh, and then we shall go ahead and spawn our proxy. Get rid of that. And then we'll start broadcasting. Right, let's just check that. So that's now gone, which is a good thing. We don't want it to be there. We want it to be over by Earth. Yes, so stars will impact the FTL speed. Stars themselves will be gravity wells, as will black holes to a greater extent. I want to scale this so that a black hole essentially renders FTL useless. So at the event horizon of a black hole, if you're going full throttle on FTL, then you'll be going nowhere. A bit like that Star Trek film where they did that, and they're full warp and going nowhere. Can't remember which one it was. Was it the first J.J. Abrams one? I think it was that one. They had that Romulan ship that was collapsing because of red matter, and they couldn't get out of the black hole that was forming because of it. So that basically. And then we'll scale that with masses around stars, so that each star's gravity well basically creates a region where FTL is not as efficient. So the quickest path from A to B is going to be weaving around stars. So you can just set a target and just fly in a straight line, but if you bother to weave around the gravity wells, you'll get there quicker. There's not a lot of complexity you can add from flying to A to B. I mean, space is empty, and flying between stars in space is an awful lot of just flying in a straight line. So there's not a lot you can do to make that more interesting. So I think gravity wells is probably the most we can do there. That and troublesome nebula. So we'll have different nebulas with different effects, and we'll have specialized nebulas as well. So we'll have nebulas which are corrosive to the ship. We'll have some which render the sensors useless. We'll have other ones that make FTL impossible from within the nebula, or at least hamper it significantly. So there'll be like null zones around the galaxy where you don't want to fly through it. It's quicker to fly around it. That sort of thing. Yeah, that sort of stuff. And we'll have a UI element. So when you're at the helm and you're looking out the window in front of you, we need to have some kind of 3D projection to demonstrate where the gravity wells actually are, so that you can actually swerve around them. Right, so this space object that we are spawning basically is now in the wrong place. So this is where we need our spawner back, and we also need to set the location of the Caravella back to where it should be. So that can go. That goes back in there. And again, we need the rotation values, which we shall steal from this one. Okay. So when we start, we should be next to Earth. Oh, there's our shuttle. Okay, there's Earth. I've got the graphics turned to potato mode, so let's just set that like that. Right, so there's our proxy Caravella, and there's our proxy shuttle. Proxy Caravella can move, so that's good. Great. So if we set our shuttle to the ARG channel, so it should now be able to collide with the Caravella. Now, bearing in mind, both of the things you see are proxies. So we should seem to have lost everything except rotation. Now I've got forward and back. Don't have rotational control. Not sure why. That's just typical. Let's just move that forward. Just going to see whether we pop the shuttle out of the way a minute. Oh, that's interesting. Why was it working backwards? Let's no, we'll leave the shuttle where it is, and we'll move that forward of the ship a bit. So forward and backwards are doing as expected, but the shuttle is going the wrong way when we hit it. Oh, I wonder whether it's using... Did I replace the shuttle mesh with the Caravella mesh? No, I didn't. Unless I did it on here, maybe. No. Weird. It's always something, isn't there? Right, let's add some potatoes. We almost have controls. I almost said potatoes. Just potatoes now is all I can think of. Are we spawning little ones again? I think we are, aren't we? Okay, so if we make the object mesh exposed on spawn, suppose really we're using the same mesh, aren't we? Which means on the spawner, and we just select potato from there. Okay, we should have 100 times bigger potatoes spawning. Not that I can see any. Oh, I see. That won't have helped. There we go, potatoes. Okay, so since we're messing with physics on here, let's just set this back to custom on there. So we've lost our pitch and roll controls, so let's just fix that. Still no pitch and roll. The mesh being hidden should make no difference whatsoever, but let's try it just to be sure. No, it's definitely not that. I wonder whether this is the same. I was thinking it could be the same issue we had before, where it wasn't thrusting enough, but it's one of those things. We've changed so many things that we've potentially broken something in the process. There we go. That was it. Why are the potatoes all so far away? Okay, so the chances of me hitting this potato are slim, but let's try it. Let's get ourselves the right way up. Okay. Coming for you, potato. Hurrah! We have boopage. Okay. So, need to take stock now of how far we've got with this. So, we have a physics-driven Caravella. It's able to hit physics-driven objects, which are spawning dynamically. So we've got the boop. The boop is working, and the potato flung off in the correct direction after being crashed into by the Caravella. So that's all a win. What's not a win is the shuttle. So I just need to work out what's going on with that in a minute, because it seems to be going in the wrong direction. So very carefully, I'm going to just go up there a little bit. And stop. Okay, well, I've hit the main ship. That's interesting, but I should also... Oh, okay. Now the shuttle's going the right way. So, I don't know what it was doing before, but that's correct. That's what it should be doing. And the main ship collisions are also working. It's difficult to fly this when everything else is moving. Yeah, let's reset that. That was too difficult. Yes, the Earth cloud texture is actually temporary. It's been temporary for about 3 years. It's going to be replaced by a volumetric cloud, so I'm not too bothered with it at the moment. Right, that should now ram that. There we go. Look at that. Everything is colliding with everything else. Huzzah. Oh, finally. I think that was it, AJ. I think what was happening is I was pushing the Caravella backwards in such a straight line that it looked like the shuttle was going forwards. But no, this is now as it should be. So yeah, so that should be it. So the next bit is technically the more difficult bit, because now we need to actually translate the controls from the helm to the new physics-driven ship that we've made. But yeah, so a modicum of success eventually. I mean, that should have taken us like an hour and a half, 2 hours less than it did, because of all those engine issues, but got there in the end. Right. What's the best way of doing this then? So we've got we're essentially calling our flyable ship, and that has a ship ID so that we know which ship it is, and it has the ability to send controls to its sim version of itself, and it has control mappings here. Now the helm input that we get basically goes through to this plugin, and the plugin's essentially a movement component that allows us to do things like fly things as if they were planes in space, but we don't want to fly it like it's a plane. We want to fly it like it's a starship. So this has never really been particularly relevant. So we're replacing all of that with our new proxy version. So I guess we need to fundamentally go back to individual key presses and then work out like the chain of events from there. I suppose these are going to have to be converted to replicated global events, because key presses from the helm chair or the helm console UI need to be replicated in multiplayer. Actually, speaking of multiplayer, before we go ahead and call that done, let us just stick in another player, and then we'll see just how broken it is in multiplayer. Well, the first issue I'm noticing is that the client is seeing a giant cube for one of the potatoes. As before, the client won't have the sun or anything, because the client can't access the same SQLite database as the host. So I'll just stick potato mode lighting on there just so we can see. So the client is flying the Caravella, and the host is also flying the Caravella, and they are not synced. And that's not necessarily surprising. Yeah, so they're not synced at all. Mainly because we've actually made no effort to sync them. So let's do that. I can go back to being hidden. I don't think it's even set to replicate, so replication, where are you? There you are. Yeah, it's not even set to replicate, so so we're not going to load this on the client. This is going to be server only, which means the client can see it but not control it. Right, so I'm currently the server, so I want to be the client. Right, so as the client, I should not be able to control it, but I can. Okay, and then as the host, it's not replicating. Okay. Oh, yeah, replicate movement would help, wouldn't it? It's interesting there. So obviously when we hook this up to advanced input, none of these will be here, but we'll retain the mapping from input to RCS thrusters. Obviously we want server authoritative movement. There we go. So obviously the client is trying. Oh, the client can kind of move it. Oh, I remember an issue with this actually. So let's. So if we just set it spinning on the server, yeah, then it's fairly smoothish on the client. So we used to use, many years ago, a plugin called SmoothSync, which made physics replication way smoother. Because we don't necessarily want to replicate the physics, we just want to replicate the actual position of the mesh. I guess what we don't want to happen is we don't want inputs coming from the client. So if we cut that off there, so that only the host can actually input anything, and then make sure there's no like fighting going on. Yeah, it might very well be the case that because the client was trying to move it, it was getting confused, right? Right, so the host is, oh yeah, it's still jank. We don't like that. The reason the shuttle is so smooth is because it's a pawn, and this is just an actor. So that'll be why that's happening. Let's just test pushing the ship just to see how well that reacts. Yeah, so that's all right. So obviously the client sees that potato as a square. Right, so okay, so the Caravella's behind us. Yeah, very janky for the client. It's probably some physics stuff here that we can change. I don't think the sleep timer will do anything to help with this, but worth trying just to be sure. Yeah, that did not help. Again, when we were doing physics replication before, we were making the static mesh the actual root component, and that made everything so much smoother, but it doesn't seem to want to let me do that. And that still looks a little bit jank. Better though. Okay, so it's alright with fast movements, but not so much with slower ones. That is marginally better though. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it'll do for testing purposes. Do I have a shuttle portal anywhere nearby? I think I might have left it all the way down in the shuttle bay. Ah yeah, of course we don't have all the proxy stuff set up for this one yet. Ah, whoops. Yeah, so this this needs updating because we should be seeing the Caravella proxy beneath us. Interestingly though, it was set to use the right distance, so so this one is so it's minus 50,000 on the Magellan. Let's make sure they're all lined up so we've got the same values. And that also needs to go down minus plus 50. Or did I do that the other way around? Yeah, so the offset differences are what makes that not line up, but that's not a problem for now. That's not a today problem. Okay, so I suppose then what we need to do... So when we're in the helm chair, it flags on the player controller that we should enable the helm controls. And that switches out our control context to being helm controls. So let's just grab our player controller. And all that happens down here somewhere. Yeah, there. Okay, so we're enabling helm controls. Changing our context. Right, and then we're sending helm inputs here. So that one, I believe, is clearing out the mapping completely. Let's just grab the Magellan one a minute. Just need to check where that's coming from. I'm guessing, well, normally I'd say player controller, but I'm wondering whether that's actually coming from game states. But basically, we need to pass a lot of these inputs through either the player controller or game state to make them server authoritative. Right, so that's our debug stuff, blah 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 blah. Good night, AJ. Have a good one. Or are we doing this from the actual widget? Because I think, yeah, if I recall what I was doing, and I need to change the way this works, but I was replicating button presses on the widget when you press buttons, when you press the keyboard buttons on the helm control. Yeah, so the enhanced input here was basically triggering the same events that pressing the button on the UI triggers, which means that we are essentially just, by pressing buttons on your keyboard, you're simulating pressing the button on the UI, which seemed logical at the time, but it's probably not really what we want to do. I mean, contextually it works because we're bypassing a mouse click and just using a keyboard input instead, and we can do the same thing for joysticks and joypads and all that sort of stuff as well. But it seems wrong to be doing that on a widget. But then if we are processing it from the widget, then at least we are able to trigger things like the buttons highlighting when you press keyboard inputs, which could be useful. And we also need to fire off finger IK for the character as well, because when you press a button, we want to see the character's hand reach out, press that button. So we could potentially grab that from here as well. But yeah, so what we do is we then use the player controller to make that into a server authoritative event. And then we use the gameplay messaging subsystem to send that out as a global broadcast, which is happening specifically on the server, not the client, because the server is the only thing that can actually control the ship. Yeah, so that should be being picked up by this. Oh, here, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, so we need to set up our listener and then process the inputs that come through from there. So the payload is basically, you know, which button we've pressed. So we need to grab that. And then we'll pop that on our new one. That one. So we're going to have to start making this sensible. So the control surface that we're pressing, right now we're tracking via an integer, and I'm trying to get away from that and use enums instead, because it's like remembering which integer is which is a nightmare. But we then need to turn that basically into this. So all of these need to be driven by this. So if we do switch on int, and then we need to know which mapping goes where. So I guess what we've got, so we should have the same input. So we've got pitch, is 0 and 1. Yeah, so we're just sending through the button ID straight through to there. Okay. And then okay, and then we are seeing whether or not it's a 1 or a -1 as to whether or not it's 0 or 1 here. So that's, so pitch down is 0, pitch up is 1. So we just need to translate that onto here. So I've already forgotten. Down is 0, up is 1. So pitch down, and then pitch up is 1. Right, and then we need to make sure we're sending Boolean value as well. Make sure we're doing released. Just following the chain through, making sure we're sending that. Yep. So we've got a reference to that, which means we need to make sure, I guess that I'm going to have to branch that. So, right, so if we get rid of the numpad values, right, we should no longer be able to pitch up and down using the keyboard. However, we should be able to pitch up and down using the helm chair. So we shall see. So pitching up and down using the keyboard does nothing. Actually, why is that even there? So don't have any controls. Okay, so sat on a bouncy chair. So we're controlling that one, and that one's stuck to us because that should be invisible. Okay. Oh, because I didn't do that. My bad. What I will do though, I shall move the bouncy chair over. So up and down does nothing, left and right does on the keyboard, so that's normal. So pitch is broken, which is what we want. And then, yeah, there we go. So we're now pitching, although we're actually pitching both Magellans, Caravellas. If we get out of the chair, you'll see that that one is in fact also pitching at the same rate. Which is good. Which means that works. So basically we now just need to translate all of these inputs into their corresponding keyboard equivalents, of which there are a bunch. Let's do yaw next. And then actually on the Caravella horn, that one, let's just break our helm input so that we're only flying the one ship. Actually, just test that a minute. Because what we're doing here is we're transitioning from the old system over to the new system, which is like fully physics driven. And obviously we're only doing that on the Caravella because we don't want to break the Magellan right ahead of a patch. Okay, so I'm now pitching that ship up and down from the helm chair, which means I should also be able to do it from here. Yeah, there we go. So the helm UI is now controlling our physics-driven Caravella. None of the other controls will do anything yet, but our pitch controls work. Right then, so we need to basically grab all the numbers that we've got here. So I guess we'll do them in order. So roll left is 2, roll right is 3. We will clear all this up, of course. I've just realised I'm an idiot. We don't need like 2 versions of that, do we? Because we've already got a Boolean value, so those branches are redundant. I just need to do that. There we go. I'm going to test this as we go, just to make sure that nothing's breaking in the process. I will, however, see if I can speed up the loading a little bit. Where's our loading? There we go. Let's change all of these to 0.1. So we add a little bit of artificial delay on the loading screen to make it more interesting to look at, so things don't just happen too quickly. But when you're testing, that's a bit of an annoyance. It's a few seconds worth of time that we're wasting. Okay, blah 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 blah. Yep, that'll do. I did consider using a single one, but sometimes we want to have some things take longer than others, so we just left them split for now. May as well use this. So roll left, roll right, pitch up, pitch down. They are all working. Obviously, once we've got all the controls lined up, then we'll delete the old Caravella Sim version and replace it with a new one. Right, what's next? So your left, your right. Not my left, your left. And 5. Again, give it a quick testy poos just to make sure it's working. No worries, CSI. Have a good one. Okay. That's all working. I'm assuming we had speed up and slow down. Oh yeah, there we go, 6 and 7. And then we're going to need to make some new ones. roll, roll, pitch, pitch, yaw, go. And backwards, ramming speed. Okay, that works. So the next one we need, so is left and right is 8 and 9 on our input list. So we need to make left and right mappings now. So that's going to be RCS left and RCS right. And this is where we have to remember what the hell we're doing. So we'll use the yaw ones. So that's just RCS left, RCS right. And then we need to remember what on earth those were, which was here. So this is where I got really confused last time. Roughly the same time of night, actually. So half asleep brain. So we're going left, so we need to fire the right thrusters. So we want port, no, so we want starboard forward, right, there we go, starboard forward right, and starboard aft right. So 18 and 19 are the two that we need to fire. So to go left, we need 18 and 19. Right, and then to go right, we need port forward left and aft forward, port aft left, which is 16 and 17. 16 and 17. Let's just give that a quick whirl a minute. I really should, yeah. I mean, it's not difficult to work out, it's just my brain's really slow. It's late, I've got a bum ache, and I need a wee. That doesn't help. I don't think we've got keyboards and mapping for that, so I'll have to use this. Left, right, left. Hang on. What did I not do? Did I not connect them up? No, I didn't. It's alright. Don't panic, I just didn't plug them in. Potentially, yeah. Oh, hang on, it is working, it's just really slow. Okay, so I need to up the values for that, I think. Let's make them more powerful. The interesting thing with these is they are offset horizontally, so this might need some tweakage. I could do with maybe putting the force values as an input on these. Sure, thank you. I shall have a look after the stream. That strikes me as opposing thrusters. Of course, the downside of now only working with a proxy is that we don't know which thrusters are actually firing, because we can't see them. Right, so 16 and 17 should be port side, fore and aft. So let's just make sure that that is indeed the case. 16, 17, port forward left and port aft left. Definitely those. So port forward left, port out left. It's those two. So if we want to go right, we fire these two. So that's 16 and 17. That is what we're firing. And then to go left, we're firing 18 and 19. Which is starboard side, forward and aft right. 18 and 19. Which is starboard forward right, starboard aft right. Okay. It would be useful to have these on the proxy, I think, at this point. Which I won't do now because we're just about to hit the end of the stream. But I think next Sunday, when we start looking at this, now I think the direction's fine. Just double checking. Yeah, the direction is definitely fine. Because we use those thrusters for doing your actions, and yours fine. I do wonder whether only one's firing though, maybe? Yeah, so 18 and 19, 16 and 17, same amount of force. Let's give it some crazy force. If it spins exactly in a circle, then we know that that they're opposed. Actually, what I can do is I can load up the test map, and we'll just hook up a keyboard input to it. Okay, left, go. so that's... Shouldn't need to, no. See, it's behaving because it's, as far as I can tell, that's stationary spinning on the top. So it's behaving like opposing thrusters are firing. Right, test map. Let's see which ones are actually firing. Alright, so we need to, on here, just set up a couple of keyboard inputs. So we want, where are we? RCS left and right. Okay, so we want keyboard, sorry, num4. You know what, I'm going to duplicate these because I need to be able to do the off version of it. Okay, and num5. That should give us a visual indicator of what on earth's going on. Oh. Of course, it's invisible, and we're moving it somewhere else, so we don't want to be doing that. In fact, let's break that. In fact, let's skip right to there. And don't hide it. It's better. Okay. Ah, see, look, it is firing the right ones, and that's really weird. So that's those two. So it's definitely firing the right two. And then, oh, see, that's only, oh no, it's firing both. I think that what we're looking at there is an offset thrust problem, because the back one, I think it's further back. Or it's a distance from the center of gravity problem, which means we need to, which way is it turning? So we need to turn down the forward one, because the aft one is closer to the center of mass. So if we see, this is where it gets difficult, because we're having to tweak physics in order to get a stable thrust. So I think it was forward and then aft, so we halve that one and then half that one. Actually no, the opposite way around, wasn't it? Because the back is thrusting more, so halve the back one and increase the front one. Yeah, I mean, it was It's obviously a design choice to have the thrusters where they are, but I could always move them further aft and balance them. Oh, that's interesting. It was stuck. Why are they inverted? That's weird. Oh, definitely not. No, we're not going to start messing around with mass changes and center of gravity changes over time. That's going to add oodles of complexity that we don't want to have to worry about. Did I get 4 is... Oh. Yes. Of course. Because those are the ones we're firing, not the ones we want to go in direction of, so... Thank you, Festus. And yes, you're quite right in that, there's a lot of issues we have to get through in order to achieve what we want to achieve. I think we're hitting that little issue we had with our it's either like a substep problem or that. Yeah, there we go. You know what? I think I had it right the right way around the first time. We've reached that time of night when I just get tired and confused. The 24-hour stream is going to be fun. I'm going to be so half asleep. Yeah, that is the right way around. So we want to be... hang on a minute. It's still doing the same thing. Weird. Well, I'll go and have a wee and think about it, and then see how that works. I'll pick through it and work out exactly what's going on. I mean, the amount that it's spinning seems counterintuitive to how little they are different from the center of mass. So there's something else going on there. That's not normal. But yeah, so we shall leave it there. Thank you once again for everyone joining. Always a pleasure to have you along, and I'm glad you enjoy watching the development, warts and all, seeing the struggles and the head scratching and the working things out and eventually coming up with a solution. I'm glad we always get there in the end. That's the most important part. But yes. Anyway, so have a good week ahead, everybody. And oh, hang on, let's check the old calendar, because yeah, so there'll be no stream on Wednesday because it's Christmas Eve. There'll be no stream on Friday because it's Boxing Day. So yeah, so the next stream will be on Saturday, which is going to be our 24-hour stream. I'll probably start streaming around about 8 PM like usual, and I'll go all the way through till midnight on Sunday. So yeah, we'll just go through and carry on with the Sunday stream like you normally would do. But yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to that. So yeah, this is the last time you'll see me before Christmas. So Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful time. Have plenty of drinks on me. Have fun with family. And yeah, I shall see you for our 24-hour stream on the 27th. Right, have a good one. Bye for now.